fast should you shoot any given target? We don't shoot a 5-yard target at the same rate of fire, the same pace of application as we would go after a 30-yard target. They should sound different. The 5-yard open target is going to be a very aggressive target. I don't need to see a lot to be able to make sure to get the points on that one. Once we get out to a 30-yard target where the area of forgiveness is dramatically diminished, what I need to see changes a little bit. What we want to do is start to give names to different aiming schemes. So what is an aiming scheme? An aiming scheme is a word or a phrase that describes the visual that we're seeing on a given target. We give names to it so that we can have something that we're all kind of speaking the same language. So this comes from, as far as I'm aware, Wanzik Kim. He kind of named this first, and I thought it was brilliant because I've never really thought of a way to tell somebody something that exhibits how fast I'm going without necessarily a metric. What he talks about is predictive shooting and reactive shooting is something we call confirmation 3. Varying targets require varying confirmation levels. Predictive shooting is going to be the lowest level of aiming confirmation while still seeing sights. That's how I like to explain it. I'm not waiting around to consciously confirm what I'm seeing. I'm predicting what the gun is going to do, understanding that if I do the same thing every time, the gun will do the same thing every time. I can predict what it is going to do because it always does. Predictive shooting is going to come at a pace that is faster than the brain can consciously process the sight picture. It can process what it's seeing, but only after it's already seen it. This would be a good demonstration of a predictive pace of fire. We can just use bill drills for this, right? So just 6 shots. At a 197, there's no way that I was going, is it good? Yeah, it is. Should I shoot? Yeah, I should. Roger that, here it comes. And dumping them out of there. That's not what's happening. What's happening is I've predetermined I'm shooting 6 shots and I'm gonna do it as aggressively as I can. I assess what happened after it already happened. That is a point harvesting strategy on targets that, based on your skill level, you can kind of just frame a gun over there and throw 2 at it and you're pretty sure they're gonna hit somewhere around the center of it and you can drive on. How far back can I do that? Old man underpants, man, it depends, right? I think that skill set is gonna be wide and varied with this, with what is acceptable, what is not. It doesn't mean that predictive shooting is not an engagement strategy or a point harvesting strategy and that you can't do it. It's that, can you guarantee it, becomes the interesting question. So at a guaranteed pace, meaning I will accept nothing less than all alpha hits, no matter what happens, right? I've got to bump the aiming confirmation up to a pace that I can consciously process each individual sight picture. So what I'm going to show you now is something called reactive shooting. Reactive shooting is going to be reactive shooting because the way that I kind of conceptualize it is I am reacting to a confirmed sight picture, right? I'm reacting to the sights touching what I'm looking at. It's good to go. Should I shoot? Yeah, you should. Shoot it then. Roger that. Here it comes. That's happening for every individual shot, but it's happening as aggressively as my human brain can do it. So this would be reactive shooting. So what we get when we get into the reactive shooting piece is very high levels of accountability. The idea with reactive shooting, as far as I'm concerned, is how long do you need to aim until you're aimed? Staring at it typically doesn't make it better, right? It's not just gonna like do better for you. I want to confirm that I am aimed and react to that as soon as humanly possible. And that's the idea with it. Confirmation 3, what is that? Confirmation 3 would be the highest level of aiming possible. This is how we would zero a gun. This is how we would take a very, very finely aimed shot. This is gonna be how you would zero a pistol. What I'll tell you is that in performance shooting, the vast majority of the time, confirmation 3 is not only not necessarily required, but it shouldn't be a thing, right? It's probably a losing strategy simply because of the time it takes to get that gun to be stopped, to be stabilized, and for everything to kind of look perfect. In performance shooting, we're not looking for perfect, we're looking for good enough is really, really fast. And so reactive shooting becomes a really good point harvesting strategy for the vast majority of targets beyond 7 or 10 yards, whereas predictive shooting is typically reserved for the closer in targets where I just see color, touch what I'm looking at, and I just paint it with color and get out of there. Predictive shooting is just that. I'm predicting what the gun's gonna do. I'm not hanging around to confirm what it's doing. The confirmation and assessment happens after the shooting's over. Very similar to doubles, right? Why we need the pause. We need to assess what happened after it happened. Like, I think a lot of times dudes will say, well, predictive shooting's not an engagement strategy. Well, I don't necessarily know that, right? And I've never done the thing for real, but like, if we're fighting Osama bin Laden in the hills out here, maybe it is. If you're in the problem in the Walmart parking lot with the daycare bus behind the bad guy, maybe not. You know what I mean? So it's not that it won't work and that you can't shoot aggressively and still hit. It's that if anything were to change in the moment, it's very hard to react to that at the pace of fire that you're giving it. So I think of predictive shooting as a gaming strategy for point harvesting and certainly a training strategy, right? Like I want to learn how to do the predictive shooting perfectly on the flat range, understanding that it'll only make better the reactive shooting. I want you to shoot the gun for 6 shots as aggressively as you can still see sights. And I'm still assessing, just like we've been doing all day, when I'm done with that, what did I see, what did I feel? What does it feel like at the end of it, so on and so forth. And I want to see if you can have a gun that's consistent enough to be able to predictably come back to what it's looking at and go off 6 times in a row. So, you ready?
Yep.
All right, shooter indicates ready, and stand by. Cool. So I would call basically at this distance, anything under 0.25 is certainly predictive, right? Based on what I feel like in conjunction with what a timer typically says. Yep. So for those, we're at 2, 4, 17, 20, 20, 22. So those are all good predictive shots. So just based on the hits, right? I think that settles the idea that like, it could be an engagement strategy. Like, would you take those hits on the day?
Sure.
I certainly would, right? Like that's pretty good shooting, right? The problem is that would you risk something or would you bet something that you could do that over and over and over again 10 times in a row, right? Sometimes, most of the time even, it might work out, but it's not the level of confirmation that I want for a guaranteed hit. Now, give me 6 reactive shots. So the gun's gonna fire, I think of it like a bouncing ball. It's just gonna come back to what I'm looking at. I think of this as if you had a paper towel tube. You right eye dominant?
Yep.
Comes from your right eye and it goes all the way to that hole of air. You can't see anything but that. When the color comes into that tube, trigger the gun, right? That's the idea with it. So 6 shots at a reactive pace. Guarantee the hit as quickly as you can. You ready?
Ready.
And stand by. Good. So vast majority of the time, what we see is that those are somewhere at or above 0.25s. So I'm at a 3.3, a 2.7, a 2.7, a 2.6, and a 2.6. I'm totally down with that. I agree, that works out pretty good. So now what I would do is I would run reactive build drills from about this distance all the way to the back, and I would see what does it look like as far as scoring when I'm done doing that? What does it look like as far as scoring when I'm done doing predictive build drills, right? Okay. And then you can kind of start to look at predictive shooting is viable with this visual, right? I try to assess the visual, not necessarily the yard line. I'm actually very happy we don't have yard lines out here. What does the visual look like when predictive shooting is probably viable versus what does the visual look like when I need to go into reactive shooting? Let's push back and try it. The goal is always all alpha. For reactive shooting. That doesn't necessarily mean it happens all the time. What I'm really trying to do and assess with this is when you're done, you should be able to say, Mark, I did not pull the trigger on that gun until I saw the sight cover what I'm looking at. If you're triggering the gun and that didn't happen, it's not that you shot too fast, it's that you didn't do it right. So I'm gonna give us a buzzer.
So this is reactive.
Yep, this will be reactive. And what I'm trying to do, understanding that, like, what does the gun do at 5 yards, right? Well, it does this. What does it do at 25 yards?
Same thing.
Same thing, right? Yep. But your perception's different, and we have a reduced margin of error here. If the gun lifted and came back perfectly every time, we should see very similar split times at any given distance, right? But the problem is the reduced margin of error here starts to give us a little bit of grief. You ready?
Ready.
Shooters ready. Stand by. Make the mount. I'll take it. We're up in 4.6, 4.8, 5.0, and 4.9. So what I'm interested in is where do you think that extra 0.15 to 0.2 of a second came from? Is it fair to say that on some of those shots, the gun, and this is not rhetorical, I don't know the answer to this, did it not come back exactly and you had to fix it, or did it come back pretty good?
I think it came back pretty consistent.
So then the next question would be, is it fair that the time was probably taken up because of how you're giving more care to your trigger pull at this distance?
Sure.
So I think that's typically what happens, right? If we see a disparity in time from the front to the back, it's either going to be the gun's not returning with the same level of acceptability and we have to fix it, or we're having to be a little bit more careful about how we're pulling the trigger.
Okay.
So let's try it again. I'm going to run one with you. Again, I think that reactive shooting is, people will internalize it as like, oh, well, it's slow. I don't ever feel like it's slow. I always feel like I'm doing it as aggressively as I can do it correctly. So like nothing about that should ever really feel slow. It should just be in time or in tune with What is the goal? The goal is I must see acceptable sights and react to them immediately. I think when we're shooting at B8s at 25 yards, a lot of dudes are like, oh, B8s make you slow. Just because the pace of application changes doesn't mean that anybody's thinking of it as being slow, man. I'm just doing the requirement that the target allows as aggressively as I can without messing it up.
Yep.
I don't ever feel like, 10 shots from 25 on a B8 is slow for me. It's always still very aggressively. It requires a little more time because I might have a little more trigger finesse, I might have a little more sight correction, like things like that. So, super cool. If you're shooting at every target the exact same way, you're probably losing a tremendous amount of time or a tremendous amount of points. So you should look at what can I get away with predictive shooting, and then when do I need reactive shooting, and then when do I need stop, still, stable dot bullseye shooting.